This video is going to be a little bit different, as we're going to learn how to create realistic flipbooks that you can put in things such as image labels and particle emitters to make cool effects that'll make your game more unique. We're going to be using Blender to aid in this process, so if you're a Blender guru, get ready to non-stop make hundreds of flipbooks, because it's quite a fun process. And speaking of fun, let's have fun learning about today's sponsor, Brilliant. What's Brilliant? I'm glad you've asked. It's an online learning platform designed to make you a better thinker and problem solver. They have thousands of visual and interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, and AI. Brilliant has been designed to be uniquely effective. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play with concepts, a method proven to be much more effective than simple lecture videos. They have the perfect mix of engaging problems, competitive features, and daily encouragement that keep you motivated and on track. Being a good programmer means you have to be good at problem solving and logical thinking. Otherwise, the stuff you code could end up in total disaster. Thankfully, Brilliant's Logic course can help you build and sharpen your logical thinking skills, which can apply into virtually all areas of your day-to-day life. I know I use logical thinking all the time when coding in Roblox Studio. So to get started learning for free, head over to brilliant.org/crusherfire or scan the QR code on screen. You'll also receive 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. So to get started, we're inside of the latest version of Blender, which as this recording is going to be version 4.5.3, whatever, something like that. If you've never used Blender before, then this is going to be a little bit fun for you. And you might notice at first that you can't move around the camera using W, A, S, and D. You're going to notice that, oh my goodness, when you press those, a whole bunch of stuff is happening. So to get out of all that crap, you need to right click to undo. And then if you changed the mode by pressing W, you can hit W again to move through the different selection modes. You can also see it in the top left here. I believe the default selection mode is going to be, I think it's that one. And then I'm just going to click to unselect everything. But if you ever go into some kind of weird mode, like if you hit S and you enter this weird scaling mode, just hit right click to undo. And to actually move your camera around, you need to use your middle mouse button. So if you hold down your middle mouse button, you can move your camera around, which is pretty cool. And then if you want to actually pan or move the camera around, you need to hold down Shift and then click and hold down your middle mouse button. And you can kind of pan your camera around, do that kind of fun stuff, rotate your camera around. And you might notice that the point at which the camera is pivoting around has changed. If you don't like that, you can hit Alt and then click with your middle mouse button. And that allows you to change the focus point for your camera around like this cube we got in the middle of the scene here. I'm just kind of like moving it around. But we don't want this cube. What we want to do is we want to render a realistic 3D model or whatever for our flipbook. So when you have this cube selected by clicking it, you just hit delete on your keyboard and it goes away. And then you're gonna hit Shift and then A. We're gonna add a new object. So Shift A, and in this case, I'm gonna add a monkey. Here's our monkey inside of Blender. Use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. So now we got our monkey. We basically need to create an animation to rotate the camera around this monkey for 16 frames because I want to make a 1024 by 1024 4x4 grid flipbook. And our camera is all the way over yonder right here. This is the camera that renders stuff in Blender. You can actually go into the view mode of the camera no matter what you have selected or wherever you are by hitting 0 on the number pad. So if you hit 0 and you hit 0 again, you can go in and out of the camera's view. Now, if you don't have a number pad, there's another option for you. I believe if you go to the top, I think it's going to be preferences. And then if you go, there might be I believe there is an emulate number pad option in here somewhere. If we go to input, yeah, there's an option right here, emulate number pad. And that's going to be for your keyboard numbers. So if you hit 0 on your keyboard, there you go. Now it goes into the camera. It's emulating all of the different things for the number pad. So if you hit like 1, you go into these different modes where you can kind of look at objects through different views and stuff like that. So if you don't have a number pad to do that, if you hit 5, by the way, I believe this is orthographic view, which is a little funky looking. So that's what 5 does. So if you don't have a number pad, you can go to Edit, Preferences, go to the Input section, Emulate Number Pad, but I have a number pad, so I don't need to do that. And this is our camera view right there. We basically need to have our camera view looking at our object, and we want to rotate this camera around the object for our animation. So the easy way to do that, we need to add a new object in here. So if we do Shift A again, we need to add in what we call an empty. And I'm just gonna add an empty cube into Blender. There's our empty cube. Basically what we want to have happen is when I rotate this cube around the y-axis, or in this case in Blender, it's actually the z-axis. Blender has a different world space setup. So if you hit R and you hit Z to lock the rotation around the z-axis, when we rotate this object around the z-axis, we want the camera to fall around with it. So to do that, you're gonna select the camera, and then you're gonna hold down Shift, and you're gonna select the cube, and then you're gonna hit Control P to parent, and we're gonna set parent to this object, and there you go, you're gonna see this dashed line pop up. And now our camera is parented, or is a child of this empty object. So now when you rotate it around the z-axis, look at that. Our camera is spinning around. Pretty cool. So if we go into the camera view by hitting 0 again, and then we rotate this object, now we've got our setup for making a cool flipbook animation. So to get started with that, we need to go down to the timeline here at the very bottom of the screen. You're gonna see you got this dope sheet, and we need to make keyframes for the rotation of this object on the z-axis. Thankfully, that's actually really easy to do. If you go to the top right here where you see this little world orientation thing, there's gonna be like a little arrow right here on the right. If you click that, it's gonna open up this crap. And when we have our object selected, it'll tell you like what the rotation of the object is and stuff like that. So what we wanna do is we want to keep our little slider here, or selection. We want to put this on the first keyframe, and then we're going to right click this rotation on the z-axis. I'm going to insert a single keyframe, and you're going to see a little keyframe pops up on timeline. And then since we need 16 frames for our flipbook animation, we want to go all the way out to not the 16th but the 17th frame. And then what we want to do is we basically want to rotate this 360 degrees to do a full rotation. You're gonna see it turns orange, and then we're gonna insert another keyframe, and then boom, we've got our animation. So now if we drag across the 16 keyframes, you can see that our camera is rotating around our object, which is perfect. Now, of course, you can also right-click these keyframes. So like if you select the keyframe and you right-click it, you can change the easy modes and the interpolation modes, keyframe types, that kind of stuff. So I'm just gonna make this linear, and I'm gonna select this one. I'm gonna also make this one linear. So now when it rotates around, it's just a linear animation. Now the next step that we need to do is we need to make this monkey a little bit fancier, because if we go up to the top right here, when we change the different modes and we go into the viewport shading rendered mode, which is gonna be kind of like a mock-up of what the final result's gonna look like. It should render here any second, and actually nothing rendered. That's kind of interesting. I wonder why nothing's rendering. Wow, that took a really long time for it to render. But there you go, there's your object. That's kind of how it looks. You're gonna see that the lighting's all off because the lighting source is over here, which is kind of not what we want. We basically want the lighting to be coming from the camera as we spin around. So to do that, let's go back to the regular mode up here, and we're gonna take our light source right here, and we wanna move it to the position of the camera. So to do that, you're gonna get your camera selected, and you can hit Shift S to open up this menu. And we want to move our 3D cursor to this selection. So the 3D cursor is that little red and white thing in the middle of the world in Blender. It's like the origin point. You can also select the 3D cursor with this thing up here. When you click it, you can move this 3D cursor around. But we want to move the 3D cursor to the camera. So we're going to do Shift, cursor to the selected, and there we go, cursor goes to the camera. And then what we can do is we're gonna go back to this default selection. We're gonna select the light. We're gonna pull up this menu again, Shift S, and we want this selection to go to our cursor. There we go. Now the light is at the camera's position. And then we want the light to fall around with the camera, so we can select the light and either parent it. We could parent it to the empty, or we could parent it to the camera. It doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna select the empty, Control P, parent, there we go. Now the light is inside of the empty. If we look in the hierarchy here, there's a light, there's a camera. And then we want to change this light to something else, to be like a spotlight or something. So if you look on the right side of the screen here, and you go down, there's gonna be this, I believe it's this data properties here, this little light bulb. And you can see that we got some light properties. We can change it to be a spotlight, area light, make it the sun. I'm gonna do a spotlight. you're going to see the spotlight kind of preview shows up here. And we want to grab this little yellow ball right here and kind of drag it. And we want it to shine on our object. You can kind of pick where you want it to shine on the object. I'll do it on the head like that. And then we can adjust some other settings like the power of this spotlight and some other stuff like the color. So let's go into the rendered view. And you can see that our light's kind of weak. It's not that bright. So let's do something like 5,000. Yeah, 5,000 looks pretty good for what we want to do. So let's just do that. I'm not going to go any crazy with the lighting. And then we also want our mesh to look not blocky. So to do that, we can right click it. And then we're going to shade smooth. And that's just gonna kind of smooth everything out for this demonstration purposes. Obviously, if you're like a Blender guru, you know exactly what you want to do. But for anybody who's new, you just kind of want to do some fun stuff like this. Here we go. Shade our monkey smooth. Let's go look in the camera view. That looks pretty good. So now what we need to do is we need to adjust this camera. So if you actually have the camera selected and we go to the camera properties, we need to change this camera's perspective to be orthographic. Orthographic perspective. So if we do orthographic, when we rotate our object or we go through this animation, our object's going to basically look centered. It's kind of the main goal here. Because if you don't have the camera's perspective set to orthographic, your animation or your flipbook animation is just not going to look right. So you got to set it to orthographic. And we need to adjust some other settings as well. So if we go to this render properties here, this is what's going to determine all of the settings for when you render the images for this flipbook animation. Now, I'm not an expert with rendering settings inside of Blender. I'm hardly a Blender expert at all. I've just seen other YouTube videos of what people say to put for the render settings. So for render engine, we want to set it to cycles. And then after we set it to cycles, we want to change the device to, if you have a graphics card, GPU compute. And then we're just going to kind of go through all these different settings for the fastest rendering possible that doesn't have terrible quality. So under sampling, if we go to, I believe, the render section, we're going to have our noise threshold set to that value, but we want to reduce the amount of samples because we don't really need that many. You could do a value of like 500. That's what some people recommend. We want to keep denoise true. So if we open that up, denoise set to true. And then the denoiser, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you can set it to OptiX. If we go to light paths, we don't need this many light paths. You can set the total to something like 5. And then there is a setting down here called Fast GI Approximation. Don't really know what this does, but I'm going to enable it because I've seen other people recommend to enable it, so that's what we're going to do. And then down inside of curves, reduce the curve subdivisions to 1. And then what we need to do is go down to simplify, set that to true, and reduce these kind of subdivisions for rendering. So max subdivision when you render, you could do like 3, and then set that texture limit if you have any high resolution textures to 2048. You could also do that for the viewport as well. There's the viewport. So if we reduce subdivisions to 3 and then we set the texture limit to 2048, hopefully it can help speed up this process. But for rendering, we set it to something like this. Culling is going to be for when you need to exclude other objects that don't need to be rendered. So if there's other objects in your workspace that you don't want to waste time rendering, then great. You can enable camera culling, set that to 0, and then enable distance culling as well. You just need to make sure that the object you want to render is within this distance. So you could set it to like 25 meters because the camera's not actually that far away. If we look at the position here, it's probably like 12 meters away. So it's not that far from our monkey, and 25 meters should be good. And if we go down to film, we want to make sure that when we render, we don't include the gray background of the scene. Instead, we want it transparent, so you can enable transparent, and you'll notice the background changes to that checkerboard transparency effect. And then under performance, there's an option in here, if I can find it, I believe it's under final render, persistent data, and it says keep render data around for faster re-renders and animation renders at the cost of increased memory usage. Yes, we want faster renders. And then now that we got these rendering settings set up, we need to go to this section for the output, and the resolution of the output is going to depend on your flipbook. So since I'm making a 1024 pixel by 1024 pixel flipbook in a 4x4 grid, well, 1024 divided by 4, it's going to be 256 pixels per frame that's stacked inside of the flipbook. So I want the resolution to be 256 by 256. You're going to notice that your camera changes. And then I'm just going to keep it at PNG with the default settings here. And then you need to make sure you select where you want the output to be. In this case, it's outputting to some kind of temporary folder, which is fine for me. And then there's also this option here to overwrite. So in case there's any files that are named the exact same thing, this will overwrite and delete them. So if you don't want that to happen, turn this off. But in this this case, we're just going to keep it on because it's going to a temporary file location, and I don't care. So now if we come back to our camera and we look inside the camera view, we definitely want to zoom in a little bit more. You can kind of see this render view here. The monkey is not close enough to the camera. So to do that, we can go to the camera and we can change the orthographic scale. So we can kind of zoom in here, kind of zoom in like that. Let me go into the non-render view so this is a little bit easier. So we can kind of like put the orthographic view at like the edges of the box. That should be good. So that way when we rotate this, or actually let me pull up this thing right here. As we rotate around, you can see the ear is getting pretty close to the edge. I just want to make sure it doesn't get cut off. Yeah, we might be actually a little bit too zoomed in. So we can go back to selecting camera, and then we can change this value to like 3. And then let's run through the animation again. I think that should be good for our purposes. And then of course, if you want to change this monkey's color, you can select the monkey, and then there's going to be an option down here for materials. I'm just going to add a new one. And I'm just going to change the color to something random, maybe like a blue color. If you want to preview the color, there is this material preview, so you can click that. We can kind of change the color up here. Maybe I want like a green monkey or a yellow monkey, or maybe I want an orange monkey. Let's make an orange monkey. There we go. We got our orange monkey. And if we look in the render view, there we go. There's our delicious looking orange monkey being rendered. So now that we kind of got everything set up, we got our animation here in the dope sheet. We need to render each of these keyframes, and then that's going to build our flipbook. So again, before we render, make sure the render output is to the folder that you want. You can hit that file folder, select the folder you want. And then to render, there's going to be an option all the way in the top left called render. And thankfully, there's an option called render animation. So if you have your empty selected that has the set of keyframes, and then you go to render, and then we render animation, it's going to go through here and render every single image. Rendering, rendering, rendering. And we don't need the 17th image. I mean, it's going to render it anyway, but the 17th image is going to be the exact same. And then, oops, it keeps going. Okay, we want to stop. I think we generated too many images, but we rendered all 17 keyframes rotating around. And then let's go ahead and go to that folder. So here are our monkey images in all their glory. So if I go through here and click through each monkey image, there we go. We have our animation of the monkey spinning around, which is pretty cool looking. And so now we can use a software like paint.net to construct our flipbook. So we're gonna have like this default thing, which we don't want. We're gonna go to image, and then we want to resize. Actually, I think we want to resize the canvas. So we want this to be the resolution for our flipbook, which is 1024 by 1024 pixels. Hit OK, there we go. Now that's a bright white. We don't want any white, so we're gonna do Control A to select everything and hit delete to delete all those pixels. So we got a transparent background to work with. And then now we just need to drag and drop our images in here and position them to make the 4x4 grid. I'm just gonna kind of be dropping my monkeys in here. I'm gonna add a layer. There we go. It positions it in the first position in the top left corner, which is what we want. And then I'm just gonna drag in my second one, add a layer. It's going to position it in the exact same position, so we need to move it. So to do that, we can use the arrow keys. You're gonna notice in the bottom left, it's gonna tell you what pixel position it's at. So as I move it, you can see that that pixel position is increasing or decreasing. We can hit Control to move in 10 increments. And we wanna go to 256. So we're at 259. There we go, 256. Then we could just move in the next one, add a layer. This one we wanna move to 512. So there we go, 512. Our next one in here, add a layer. And we're just gonna kind of rinse and repeat this process. So this one needs to go to like, I believe 768 is the correct position. So there we go, there's our first set of frames, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we need to do the rest of them. So I'm gonna grab in the 5th frame. We need to add a layer. This one needs to go down 256 pixels. So there we go, 256. And then we're just gonna kind of keep dragging and dropping them. This one needs to go over 256 pixels, and then needs to go down 256 pixels. And I'm just using arrow keys. So this one's now at 256, 256. Let's keep moving the other ones in here. All right, we got the third layer complete. We got to do the final layer. I'm just going to keep adding in these things down here. So this needs to go all the way down to 768. There we go. Get the 14th frame in here. Bring it all the way down 768, and then we need to move it over to 256. So there we go, 256. Do the exact same thing for the second to last one. Oops, move it down a little bit too much. 768, and then bring it all the way over to 512. There we go. And then the final one is actually just going to be the exact same. Actually, no, it's not going to be the exact same as the first one. It's going to be close to the first one because we want to have a clean loop for our images. So the first and the last frame in our flipbook should not be the same. There we go. This is our flipbook in all of its glory. Our 4x4, 1024 by 1024 pixel flipbook. So now that we got this done, we could just save this image to a file and then upload it to Roblox. So I'll see you there. Here we are back in studio. I've uploaded the monkey flipbook as the texture for this particle emitter. And as you can see, this doesn't look quite right. We want the monkey flipbook to be happening. So to do that, we need to go to the flipbook layout settings and we want to say, hey, this is a 4x4 grid flipbook. And now that we got our 4x4 grid flipbook, you can see our monkey is there. And then we can adjust the frame rate of the flipbook. So like if we want it to spin around 50 frames a second. That's hilarious. We got our spinning monkeys, and then you can change the flipbook mode. So if you want it to be like one shot, actually that's kind of lame looking. Ping pong, yeah, ping ponging back and forth. You can do random rotations. That looks crazy. Or you could do a loop animation. There we go. We got our crazy monkeys spinning around. And then actually let me change the rate to just 1. So that way there's one monkey, and then that way we can see it at the same time. I'm just going to increase the Z index to something crazy. Like I believe 1 or 2 should be good. And then actually let me put it inside of an attachment. So that way it's like in the middle. And then we're going to set the speed to like nothing. So we got a spinning monkey there. And then the lifetime, just have the lifetime set to, I believe, 1 second. So that way there's only one monkey at a time, I believe. There should be only one monkey at a time. Let me reduce the frame rate to like something a little more reasonable. There we go, we got a monkey head. That's pretty cool looking. Now it's kind of jittering from the start. I wonder if there's a better way to blend this, or maybe it's just gonna have to be this way. But we got our spinning monkey head, and it's an image. It's a monkey. Pretty funny looking. Yeah, so I believe you need to have the frame rate of the flipbook match how many frames there are inside of the flipbook. So because this is a 4x4 or 16 total grid flipbook, you can see when I set the flipbook frame rate to 16, it looks like we just have a persistent spinning monkey, which is very funny looking. Imagine just having this in the world somewhere in your game, just a spinning monkey. And you can kind of mess around with this too. So if you wanted to like, that is trippy looking. That is so weird looking. Velocity perpendicular, velocity parallel. I think I need to add a little minor speed to this to actually make that work. That is so weird looking. So if you ever wanted to take over your Roblox game with a giant spinning monkey, I've got you. I wonder if we can make this guy even bigger. Like what if 200, 250, 500? Oh gosh, that is not rendering correctly. Maybe I need to change the Z offset to like 100 or something. No, that's not working. How do I make this guy like not transparent? Do I need to be really close to him or something? Change transparency, move this attachment up or something? Where's my monkey? I guess particle emitters just have a problem rendering when you get too big. Once you get to this size, maybe go back down to like 100. Okay, there we go. We have a giant monkey in the sky. Very beautiful. I don't know why it's flickering like that. I'm pretty sure this is a Roblox problem. So not only can you have a giant spinning monkey particle emitter, but maybe you want a giant spinning monkey that's on your screen. And you could use something like my GUI image class, which I made public through all these different resources in the video for the 10,000 subscriber celebration. So if you haven't seen that and you haven't gotten these resources, video will be in the top right corner. Go check it out. But we can use my GUI image class. So if I go into my flipbook GUI that I got here, and instead of using this asset ID of a different flipbook, I want to use the monkey flipbook, which we're going to put in here. And thankfully, it's the exact same image resolution of 1024. And then it's the 4x4 grid with we're going to set the flipbook mode to loop. And then I'm going to increase the frame rate to 16, I guess. And that's what we're going to kind of do here is just have this continuously repeat itself. So that way, if I go play my game, we test, we should have a little monkey in the bottom right. Yeah, look at that. We got a little monkey down there spinning continuously on the screen, which is hilarious. Actually, I want to resize it. Let's make it bigger. We're gonna have a bigger monkey on the screen. So if we go to do the flipbook GUI, there's our image label. I want to make this larger, so let's do like 500 by 500 pixels. There we go. We now successfully have a giant spinning monkey on our screen. Epic. So I hope you enjoyed this very random video on how to make realistic looking flipbooks. And that's all I got for you. A bunch of spinning monkeys. So I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.